what? We represent what happened in the U.S. during World War II to support the war effort. About the moms and all of the how all the families got together and came together with rationing and donut dollies and Red Cross. And
wait, what's a donut dolly?
A donut. When the troops came home, the troops would need to be entertained. So they would have these canteens set up, which would have donut dollies. And they would serve donuts and sandwiches and coffee and soda to the troops and would entertain them, give them something to do. They might have music playing, they might have some dancing going on. But basically they were there to give the troops some relaxing time.
Yeah, Victory Gardens were in response to a war effort. And they've been around since even the 1600s, when England was looking at a possible invasion from the Spanish Armada, that they started Victory Gardens there. And during World War I, they were called Liberty Gardens, and World War II, after the bombing of Pearl Harbor, the Department of Agriculture got together with the USDA, and they put together a commission, and they asked that the towns and people make Victory Gardens here in their homes and that type of thing, in the side yard. And Conneaut had a Victory Garden down off from Main Street, down by the Bessemer Railroad tracks and Conneaut Creek. That area was all cleared, and people that didn't have a yard could use that. They also planted flowers there, and they took the flowers into the hospital for wounded vets that were there, or just people that were in the hospital and during the war. They also were people who gave the excess food. They ate the fresh vegetables, and they gave any excess to their neighbors, to the Red Cross, to soup kitchens, that type of thing, so nobody was hungry, kind of thing. And it really increased the civic spirit in our country, I think.
Rationing, everything.
Fat or something? I don't.
Fat was saved.
What did they do with it?
They sold it to they saved it in buckets, whatever they could save it in. Take it to the butcher would render it, and then they would sell it to the U.S. Army, and the U.S. Army would make explosives. It went into the manufacture of gunpowder. That's what grease is used for. And that's why everybody saved their grease from whatever they cooked. And they would reuse the grease. The women would actually reuse the grease 2 or 3 times before they would get rid of it because of the rationing. Everything was in such short supply. Rationed items were sugar, coffee, chocolate, meat, canned and processed foods. Your meats was the #1 rationed item. They all went overseas. The women back home, if you had a farm and you had a husband that loved to fish or hunt, that's where your meat sources. So they ate a lot of fish, and a lot of brains and sweetbreads were your meat source during World War II because all the good beef and pork and was going overseas. Now, if you had raised chickens and you were on a farm, you were in wonderful shape because you could basically kill your own chickens and have your own meat. And you raised your own. They had Victory Gardens all over the country. Everybody raised their own vegetables, and the farmers would raise excess vegetables and sell it to the government and that's where all the vegetables and stuff came from, and they sent it overseas to the guys. So farmers really, if you were a farmer, you were in pretty good shape during World War II. It's the people that was in the city that dealt with more rationing issues, because you could produce a lot of your own food when you lived on a farm. And they encouraged people to do that if you were on a farm and actually share your goods with someone else. But things that were rationed, gas, if you were a family, an average family, you only were given 4 gallons of gas for the week. That was it. A lot of people walked.
Yeah.
They did not. I was told that most people, if they had bicycles, they would use their bicycles and leave the car at home. You only use the car during wartime to go a specific place for short periods of time and conserve on your gasoline.
All the trains and trucks and this kind of stuff were occupying space, transporting troops. They were transporting war goods, for the war effort. So they didn't have, we couldn't ship in tomatoes from California, or what we do today. We bring oranges from Mexico or Florida or whatever. You couldn't do that because there was nothing to transport them on.
Put this Homefront display to tell about everything that went on. Women working in the factories, the men were all gone. Working at war, soldiers, and the women took the men's job up. They went in the factories, they worked with airplanes, they did every job that a man usually would do. And that actually, World War II was the time that made women come to the forefront. They got out of the homes. After the war, they didn't want to go home. They got used to having that money to spend. And money was plentiful during World War II because everybody went to work that didn't have a job during the Depressions making armaments.
Right.
All the children did scrap drives, scrap metal. Newspapers were collected. Just about every item you can think of was used for the war effort. And that's what we try to bring to the forefront here, to let people know, yes, you have all the military and they did this, but this is what went on back home. The moms basically took care of the house. They paid the bills. They took care of the kids. They got them off to school. They went to work in the factories. They took care, they did all the lawn work, and yet they did not hear from their husband or their loved one who was overseas fighting. There was no communication for 6 months to a year. She didn't know where they were, whether they were alive or dead. She was a strong woman. She had to do all of that, plus deal with all this emotion. Is my loved one alive or is he dead? I don't know. So she was a very strong woman during the 40s, during the war. And I really take my hats off to that generation. I think it's just a wonderful time when the whole country came together, families, women, grandma and grandpas. Grandmas went to work in the factory. Prisoners in the United States were put to work. There's 2 pictures on that board out there. The women are making flags. I said they're women prisoners. The men are making parts for airplanes, manufacturing them there inside the prisons. So prison workers were being actually put to work. There wasn't one person that didn't have some kind of job to do for the war effort.
Did you know the story about the milkweed pods? No? The elementary school children were asked to bring in milkweed pod. And the reason for that was the Japanese had disrupted the supply for the interior of the life preservers. And they took the inside of the milkweed pod, the fluffy puff stuff, and stuffed the inside of the life preservers with that.
British Air Raid Wardens. The ARP stands for Air Raid Precautions. That was their term for Air Raid Warden.
Okay.
That's the organization we belong to, Air Raid Precautions. Our number 1 job would be to enforce the blackout. Okay, the blackout was a time of night when the sun went down, completely set, and everybody had to black out their windows, their doors, so that no...
Like with black paper?
Black paper, black cloth, Some of them actually made panels that they could just simply put over the windows each night instead of hanging curtains, all right? But as long as no light came through, the British government didn't really, some of them used cardboard painted in black. Okay? So no light could come through because the airplanes at night can't see the light from a town or from a house. And that led them to the area they maybe wanted to bomb. And you didn't want to be the house that gave it away. Second major thing we did was teach people how to use their gas mask. Everybody had to use a gas mask. Had to carry one with them all the time. If they didn't have it with them, they were sent home. You got to go get it, otherwise you can't be outside.
This is in England.
This is in England,
Okay.
yes. Because the number one fear of the British people was they were going to be gassed. Never happened, but they were well prepared for it. Okay. Number three was to make sure you guided people during an air raid to their shelters. Because in the city there would have been like going to subway, tunnels, or designated air raid shelters in the city. Those were the major things, and teach people how to put out incendiary fires and some small amount of first aid. That's a gas rattle. That says there's gas in the area. That's another job we would do. In a city, there'd be 5 or 6 wardens in charge of a block. The bell is the all clear, okay, for gas. So if they did the gas rattle, means there's possible gas in the area. Put your gas mask on, ring the bell, all clear. Take the gas mask off, go back to normal, if there's such a thing.
Well, the air raids over London, how often did they happen? How often?
Okay, from September 7th to sometime in March of the next year. Every night.
Is this 1939?
Yes, 1940.
Okay.
Every day. Every day. They missed one day in that time period.
Oh my God.
They started out during the daytime, but the German planes took too many losses during the day because of the RAF, so they shifted to nighttime. And it became even worse. So we've met some people who were actually children during that time, survived the Blitz. They said, well, they'd hear the air raid siren go off maybe around 6 o'clock at night. They jump into the shelter, probably would stop around 5 or 6 the next morning. So it's all night long.
Oh my gosh.
And if you were in the country, you had your own personal shelter called an Anderson shelter. And the guy would say, we'd run out back, we'd jump into the Anderson shelter. There was only benches and some pad and some bedding that they could stay in overnight. And then you'd just sit there and you'd hear boom, 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 boom. And the Anderson shelter would withstand anything but a direct hit. So they might get up the next morning and their house is gone. You know, so. Yeah.
What a way to live.
I can't imagine. They said they didn't get a lot of sleep.
No, I don't imagine.
Okay, so in the 40s there was a lot of curling and a lot of rolling or braiding. I guess you could say bobby pins and hairspray were a girl's best friend. And they did a lot of like the finger type of roll. So what you would do is you would grab a chunk of hair.
Go ahead and don't cut
And
your
normally
hair
you would get some spray on it. And then you would wrap it around 2 fingers.
Oh yeah,
And
I'm pretty sure.
once you got it wrapped,
Or long enough.
you just keep rolling it up. And then you would pin it in place to the head. Normally, like the younger girls would have their hair braided maybe in pigtails. And then a lot of the, say, teenage kind of girls would have more of the bigger volumed hair, maybe like side victory rolls, like this young lady has here.
Is that what they're called, victory rolls?
Yep, victory rolls. And then at night, the young ladies and, well, all the ladies actually.
They sleep standing up?
Yeah, kind of actually. They would take their hair and they would roll it around their fingers and pin it flat to their head, which is called a pin roll. And that way when they woke up in the morning, their hair would be really nice and curly, have lots of volume, and then they could do a better job at getting it pinned straight to their head. But you could also do it if it was straight, as long as it's dry.
Here's the monkey boogie bugle boy of company.